Welcome to Therapy Unplugged, the podcast where two therapists offer insights to the real-life issues we all experience. We are your hosts, Sarah Benoit and Meaghan McCullough. Welcome back, listeners. It's good to have you here as always. Hi, Meaghan.
Hi, Sarah.
How's it going?
Good. It was a beautiful
Good.
weekend.
Oh, my goodness. I know, right? We're so blessed to have this happen in October. So, in our last episode, we talked about emotional resilience. And one of the things that really builds and supports emotional resilience is our sense of community and community connections. And so today, that is what we are going to explore, and how intentional community can really help us to buffer burnout, foster healing, and deepen rather that emotional resilience that we spoke of in the previous episode. And at least I can say one of the things that I enjoyed about kind of prepping for this topic was it was a couple things. It actually promoted a lot of conversation within my friends, which I thought was really kind of fun. And I've known this, but it was kind of validating to hear that, especially as we get older, it can be really challenging to be connected. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and if you think of like how easy it is to become absorbed in our daily life, in our work, in our responsibilities at home, whatever that looks like, it's very easy to lose those connections. And not, again, it's not intentional. It's just we get sucked into everyday life. And so, one of the things that as I was preparing, and I kept this kind of in the forethought of my brain, was that idea of intentional. So, having intentional community connectedness. And the reason I liked that is because it requires effort
Mhm.
and it requires mindfulness. Like we have to think about it. It's not just, oh, that can wait, that can wait, that can wait.
Yeah, I love that you are using the word intentional here. And one thing it makes me think of is that, when we were younger and as we went through our grade school, middle school, high school years, it really well, I'll speak for myself. I had certainly a lot of social connection and friendships and whatnot, but it wasn't intentional, right? Like, I
Right?
had to put very little effort into it because you're just kind of you're thrown into these situations with peers your age, and hopefully, right, at least a couple, if not more, relationships develop from that. And I think it can be very jarring for people without realizing it at the time, because I've definitely talked to a lot of clients about this. After high school, and let's say maybe if you go to college, after
Mhm.
college, as you get into your kind of later 20s, early 30s, I have heard so many people talk about how challenging it can
Yes.
be to suddenly keep that sense of social connection because you're not, right? You're kind of moving out into the world more
Mhm.
independently. And so I completely agree that as adults, it does take some effort.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think you bring up a really important point, and I believe we talk about that in one episode, maybe in season 1, where it is that, like, when you're little, or not just little, but even, through college, your community is provided for you.
Yes.
And whether you like it or not, the good, bad, and the ugly, but it's built in.
Yes.
And then as we become more independent, and I do think that some people, especially people that are more extroverted,
Mhm.
that's very easy for them.
Right.
And they think nothing of sitting down and talking to strangers. But I think for an introvert, that's very different.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. Yeah, and that's actually one of my we'll talk more about it later, but when we get into talking about suggestions on how to build community,
Mhm.
that is one of my suggestions. I think maybe this is a good time to say this too, at least for me, as I was prepping for this episode and I was just thinking about it. For me, I feel it's important to let our listeners know that building social community doesn't necessarily mean you're going to or you have to go out and find your community of besties, right?
Mm.
It can be something as simple as going out into the world and just having that conversation perhaps with a stranger. And trust me, I'm
Yes.
an introvert. I'm not saying that's easy, but it's amazing what these kind of interactions, as simple as they may seem, sometimes they can lead to something,
Mhm.
right? I it's making me think about I wasn't going to bring this up, but Derek, my husband, I remember a couple of years ago, he was out on his electric bike. And I think he went to Home Depot of all places, and he ran into a guy around his age, I think he was a little younger, also on one. And they just started
Mm.
chatting, and they ended up, like, going on bike rides together, you
Oh,
know?
fun.
It's like, so if you can kind of stay open
Yes.
to those kind of interactions, I think that so that was a long way of saying building social community, I think, or social connection can look different to
Mhm.
different people, and it doesn't have to be just one thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and I think I don't know about you, but I am excited to get into that solution part of
Mhm.
how to connect, but I think before we get there, I think we need to talk a little bit about, what is the benefit of being connected? Because I think I don't know about you, but I have seen this in my practice and especially with people who have depression and even some with anxiety. But it's very easy to push aside the value of being connected,
Yeah.
or to come up with I can't think of another word, but it's not necessarily for some it's an excuse, but for some it's just they've told themselves long enough that I don't need this, this isn't important. So then they really believe it and there then becomes a fear of being connected
Mhm.
because again, well, I've this has been my way for so long and it's working just fine.
Yeah,
What is it?
agreed. So it gets knocked down on the priority list,
Yes. Yeah.
and especially, right, as responsibilities grow or you start to have a family or a career. It is, yeah, I agree, it's very easy, and I would include, to be honest with you, I would include myself in this category. I'm
Mhm.
not always the best about that social piece,
Mhm.
so this is good for me too, to really be reflecting on it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think and that's what we were just talking about. I think that is one of the benefits of social connectedness is it kind of pushes us to grow. And again, this is if we're being intentional about it.
Right.
And I think the other thing is it I mean, and this is really obvious, but it may not feel like it in the moment. It really does reduce that loneliness, that idea of loneliness and isolation. But I think that can be really challenging for people because if they've gotten themselves in a space where, well, I don't need that. Like I hear that like, well, I don't need a lot of people.
Mhm.
Well, maybe you don't need a lot of people,
Mhm. Mhm.
but we are wired to need people.
Exactly. Exactly. If you're not sure about that, watch the TV series Alone. Do you know that TV
No.
the survival it's a survival show, but it is one that I find fascinating as a therapist
Mhm.
because these very skilled people that have, all of these outdoor skills to survive a long time, like out in the wild, they they are put in these very, very remote areas, and, it's the typical kinda tacky survival show thing, but the idea is that whoever lasts the longest typically will, like, win a sum of money. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is that it's fascinating to watch because so much of the time, the number one issue with staying out there I isn't necessarily the skill set, it's the loneliness, it's the
Mm,
isolation, and these are with people that are quite used to spending big chunks of time alone outside, but that comes when I do watch the show, that's one of the things I really do reflect on.
nice,
Yeah.
nice. Interesting, because I could imagine just sitting there kind of piecing that up, like, analyzing it, which is probably not the
Mhm.
point of the show, but
No, but
so what are some of the benefits that you see, that we gain from being connected?
Mhm. Well, another important one is the correlation between social connectedness and physical health.
Yes.
So you can really find, if you're interested, a lot of different articles and research showing the correlation between social connection and enhanced immune system, lower blood pressure, decreased risk of chronic illness, these
Mhm,
kind of things. I
mhm,
think I've also read about, like, a decreased issues with chronic pain,
mhm.
and one of the things that this makes me think about, this is another kind of personal example, but I have an example with my mom who is 85,
Mhm.
kind of living this idea of the importance of social connection. So she's always been quite social. But as she got older, she eventually lived alone in an apartment, and it was a very nice apartment, but she she was not nearly as connected socially as she used to be. And around that time is when her physical health really started to take a toll.
Ah.
And a few years ago, she moved into an assisted living facility where she's still completely independent.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden, she is, living with people her age, and she has developed some incredibly wonderful friendships
Mm.
through this. And lo and behold, her physical health, and I won't go into details about what, but has improved drastically. And I would say
Ah, very
her
nice.
mental health as well. Yes.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it's interesting because I think you bring up a really interesting point, which that physical health improved, but then that idea of the mental health improving. And I
Mhm.
think that's one of the things that happens that we don't necessarily maybe realize is, like, if we're struggling or if we're feeling, emotionally depleted. Now, again, it depends on who you're with. If you're with someone who's driving you crazy, I mean, they're not necessarily going to make you feel better, but it can help us not feel. It can restore us emotionally,
Yes.
and it can also help us if we're stuck, get us out of that stuckness because it gets us often out of our own heads. Like, one thing I will say to people all the time is that they're like, "Well, I don't," I'm like, "Are you talking to your network of people?" "Well, I
Mhm.
don't wanna burden them." I'm like, "Well, 1,
Mhm.
you're making an assumption that you're going to be burdening them,
Right, right.
and 2, and I'll use the example of myself. I'm like, outside of work, there are times when I really want to hear what is going on for someone else, and not just because I care about that person, but because it helps me get out of my own head,
Yes. Yeah.
and it helps me to realize, like, okay, I'm part of something bigger. It's not just my bubble. And I think it's again, when we're isolated, it's very easy to, only see what's right in front of your face. But if you are out in the world, whatever that looks like, or however that looks for you, you are realizing that, okay, maybe what I'm experiencing, yes, is important, but maybe it's not the end of the world,
Mhm.
or maybe I can help somebody else out there, and that's gonna make me feel good because I made a difference.
Absolutely. Yep. It really can get us out of our own heads, right?
Yes.
And give us
Yeah.
that bigger picture, right? Again, that kind of 10,000-foot view,
Mhm.
of our lives, and you're absolutely right. It getting out and helping others and connecting with others is one of the fastest ways I think that we can actually improve our mood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And even you said it earlier, like that idea of talking to a stranger. Now, I know I personally, I vacillate sometimes where I'm really happy, and I'll always do this where I'm always polite when I'm in public, say please, thank you.
Mhm.
Like if someone holds the door or whatnot. And to an extent, like I'm weird about small talk. Like sometimes I'm fine with it, but other times it drives me batty.
Yeah.
But I will tell you generally the one thing that, and I think that's because I have a neon sign above my head that says, "I'm a therapist, tell me your
Mhm.
life." But so if I'm in the grocery store and all of a
Mhm.
sudden someone is that I don't know is like, "Oh, my whole life this
Mhm.
happened and this," I'm like, "Oh god." But again, I will reframe it sometimes. Like I'm not gonna lie, there's that part of me that's like, "Seriously? Like I'm not on the clock."
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
then I will reframe it and be like, "Hey, this person needed to say something to somebody, and if I could
Mhm.
be that person, and even just that listening and maybe validating them
Yeah.
helped, great. Okay, so I've done a good thing for the day, they feel better, and, all right, move on."
Yeah, absolutely, and don't get me wrong, I don't want you or anyone else to think that I'm just always going out into public and being that person that's like, can just talk to anyone or is super chatty. That's actually not me,
Mhm.
which is one reason why sometimes I like to challenge myself on it.
Mm,
And I have to be in the mood, right? Like, it's
yes.
not, there are plenty of times when I am very much just happy to be in my own little world doing my own thing. So, yeah, I think it depends on a lot of different factors, but it can be beneficial. It's at least been my experience.
Yeah. It was very interesting when I was putting my notes together. It I came across 2 words, storytelling, and that really struck me because I think that is one of the things that I like the most about being connected
Mm.
is I think that's part of what's lost today is that idea of storytelling, because I like when I hear people's stories or I hear them telling someone else's story, whether it's funny or whatnot, you realize that there's so much more out in the world.
Yes.
And the other part of it too is you if you aren't telling our stories, we're not being heard, but we're also not transferring stories, you know, generationally or within the family or within friend groups. And it was really interesting because this weekend I was with my friend Kristen and we went to this thing. It was like a salt cave, but we were doing a foot bath. And as we're sitting there, we're sharing stories from when we lived in California, when we lived out there twice during college and then after college. And it was really funny because the woman who was like running the spa looked at us and she goes, "Are you two sisters?" And we're
Aw,
like and we said, "No, we used to always get that too."
did
Um,
you?
Yeah, and we explained the relationship to her, and she's like, "You guys have some great stories."
Mhm.
And so it was it's fun to reminisce.
Mhm.
Um, this lady got a few laughs at our adventures. So, I it really resonated with me seeing those 2 words because I think that's, again, one of those threads that can keep us connected.
Absolutely. Yep, and I this is why this is so great that we do this together because I hadn't really thought of storytelling in that way connected to this,
Mm,
but I can share something really quick too that just happened this weekend that I think is another example of what you're talking about, the storytelling.
mhm.
Um, Yesterday morning, I got in my car and I start driving in a, relatively busy area, and as I'm approaching an intersection, a woman well, it wasn't just there were a lot of people, more than normal, like, congregating, and I was like, "Okay, this is kinda interesting," and as I approached the stop sign, she ran up to me, and while I was in my car, and for a second, I thought, "Oh, boy, I is she in trouble?" And I was getting ready to roll down my window to see if she needed help, but as I rolled down my window and she approached my car, oh my gosh, she was so excited to tell me that there was a moose, a very large moose, ambling down Water Street, the
Oh
street
my
that I
gosh.
was on. And part of it, I think, was to warn me, but
Right.
the other part was she was so excited. And what I noticed was it really like, it spread through the community very quick because 'cause we're talking about, like so it went down Water Street, and I admit I did kind of follow because I mean, how often you get to see a moose going downtown? And then it took a right onto Main Street,
Oh my
and
goodness.
so a lot of people saw it. A lot of people saw it. And it was so funny because I I could hear, so my windows are down, just everybody talking about it. And it kind of brought people together. I mean,
Mhm.
it's kind of a silly example, but it's like thinking outside the box, right? And with regard to the storytelling, I go back to this woman, you could tell it just made her day and she wanted to share it. Yeah.
Aw, that's a good story, and that's like you said, I mean, I don't know, I've never seen a moose walking down Main Street, so
Remind me to I have a picture. I will send you a
Oh,
picture.
nice. Cool. Okay, are there any things that you think we have missed in terms of the benefits of social connectedness?
I think we've covered the big ones. The only thing I might add is that I think sometimes when you have good quality social connections, it can help you with your networking.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
if you're interested in such a thing, right?
That's
So
a good point.
if you're networking regarding your career or
Mhm,
maybe even just your it doesn't have to be your career necessarily, maybe just, something a hobby of yours that you're very interested in, but I think that good social connections can really strengthen your network in that way.
mhm. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think this is probably the harder part of it for people, which is, okay,
Mhm,
how? How do I
mhm,
connect?
mhm,
And I know when I started to write my notes, I started to think about I kind of put my head in a few spaces. One was when Kristen and I moved to California because we literally knew nobody. But I think the benefit there was that we had each other, so we weren't completely alone. And, excuse me, I've had clients that when they have retired, they relocate.
mhm,
And that has been interesting because some people are doing it with their spouse. Some people do not have a partner and are going solo out into wherever. And I think they bring up different challenges. And so one of the things that like I thought about was just in terms of no matter where you are, kind of like that idea, I always start small.
Mhm.
So thinking, okay, what's local? Like,
Yeah.
what is local to me? And if I were to be new to a community or a city or whatever, I know one of the things I would do is I would start to frequent local places. Like, I'd make sure I go into the local coffee shops and get
Yes.
coffee there, pick the store that I'm gonna do my grocery shopping in,
Yes.
um, pick a place that I'm gonna be getting my hair done.
Mhm.
And that, I think, starts the ball rolling. And if you think about it, I mean, maybe with the exception of, like, you don't have to go out and get coffee, but there's certain things we have to do. We have to buy groceries.
Right.
And, maybe the instinct is, say, let's just say you're anxious and, well, I've always had my groceries delivered, or I do curbside pickup so I don't
Mhm.
have to see anybody. But what would happen if you challenge yourself, maybe, like, every other week you do the delivery, or you do,
Right. Great
you know,
idea.
the curbside, and then the off weeks, or if you just need a few things, you challenge yourself to go into that store because you're gonna start to see the same people.
Exactly. Yeah, and, I think, the coffee shop is a great example, and, of course, not everyone drinks coffee, right? Now, I absolutely love it, but even if you're not a coffee drinker, it is a perfect example of something that right, you're going to start seeing the regulars, right? And
Yes.
I have a client that has shared with me a couple of times how important her her so her morning ritual is once she's ready to leave for work, she always leaves early and she stops at this particular coffee shop around the same time every morning.
Mhm.
And she has, kind of like cultivated this group of people. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. It's not like everyone's always there at the exact same time. But she said to me, it's amazing how much I realized that sets the tone of my day. And we just,
Mm.
it's not like we're chatting for hours because most of us are going to work. But even that 10 minutes, she said it really has given her this sense of coffee shop community.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I know some people that work as baristas, and they enjoy seeing what they call their regulars.
Oh, sure. Yes.
So that reciprocation of, being excited to see one another, it's a very brief exchange.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I if you're the customer, the barista's probably learned your order,
Yes.
and, is so there's that sense of, "Oh my gosh, they know me, they know what I want," and, they're helping me with that, and then the barista, it's that connection of, like, "This is easy," right? Like, "I know what you want. You're gonna be like, this is easy peasy for me."
Yes. Absolutely. And that is a really good example of again something small that could have a meaningful impact because if you think about it, if I'm going someplace, a few times a week and it's a friendly, familiar face and they know me well enough to know what I'm ordering,
Mhm.
that alone, I think, could alleviate a sense of maybe isolation or loneliness that so many people report,
Right.
right? And it's so simple. Um,
Yes.
but so I love that. I love that example.
Yeah. So what are some ways that you would start building community, or you offer to
Mhm.
people?
Well, maybe this is a good time to mention perhaps this is one level up from what you just talked about, Sarah. Like, so going to establishing your routine at the grocery store, at the coffee shop, or whatever it is. So one thing that I know I've been really practicing, especially the past few years, and especially since COVID,
Mhm.
and going so in my private practice is fully remote.
Mm.
Um, and that's since 2020. Prior to 2020, I was in an office every day.
Mhm.
Um, but so since 2020, I've put a lot of intention into for me anyway, going to specific classes at my YMCA.
Mhm.
And so the idea here, kind of one level up from the grocery store, is setting intention to perhaps join whether it's a club or join a group or a class
Mhm.
that would interest you. And so you and I think, I mean, even if it was a one-time shot, like a workshop or something, that's great. But I think that if you can find something that's consistent where you're going, maybe once a week, maybe 3 or 4 times a week like I
Yep.
do, you start to experience the idea of a group of people getting together with a shared interest.
Yes. Yes.
And for me anyway, I the the why for me has been just so beneficial in so many ways.
Mhm.
And one of them has been some of the women that I've met in these classes that I go to, where we really do have kind of a shared interest in healthy lifestyle.
Mhm.
And so we're now, not all the time, but I would say maybe once a month or something, we might do something outside of class.
Mhm.
Like last week, there were a few of us that went hiking.
Mm.
Um, and so I didn't, when I joined the Y, I didn't have that intention thinking I was going to make these social connections, but they've happened organically, and now I can't really imagine my life without them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Nice. And I think you bring up an interesting point too, like, one of the things on my list was, like, this would be what I would do. I would join a gym.
Mhm.
But I think you bring up an interesting point around of what you went in, the reason you joined, but then kind of what came out of that.
Right.
And we have a new gym in town. It opened this summer, and I had belonged to the gym at the local university. Didn't really care for it, and I didn't enjoy going, but it served its purpose. I mean, I
Mhm.
felt in hindsight, it was more about checking the box.
Mm.
And when I went and checked out this gym, it was very interesting because it definitely, and I don't think I realized this until I went and checked it out, was that the gym I'm now a part of is much more aligned with me. It's much more aligned with the type of workout that I want to do. The type of people that are there to work out. And it's it we're not all the same age group. I mean, it actually is very interesting. It goes
Mhm.
from, say, high schoolers up to, maybe people in their 70s, but it's a serious, like, it's a real serious attitude. It's not, "Oh, it's just not the social piece," and there's definitely a social piece, like,
Sure.
we're all talking, like, I remember over the summer, I brought some vegetables in for the owner because we were talking about it. I was like, "Oh, I have some extra of this. Would you
Nice.
want it?" "Sure," and then he brought me some, and, so it's grown. It was finding the fit.
Yep.
And that was something that I was talking with my girlfriend about this weekend because I asked her, I said, she's definitely more of an extrovert. And I said, if you were to say to somebody, if you had some advice in terms of connection, what would that be? And I gave her kind of the context of what we were talking about.
Mhm.
And I thought this was so helpful because she said, the biggest thing I would say to someone is don't give up. So if
Hmm.
you don't find
Mhm.
at the first go that this
Mhm.
is your group, and the example she gave me was that her and her husband wanted to find a running group because they run together, but they wanted to extend their community. And she said the first running group we joined, it was all little kids. She goes, that was not our
Right.
group.
That's
The second group was so competitive. It was all about personal records. Every single run was about breaking your personal record, and
oh,
so
yeah.
she says, so we've got 2 extremes. She says,
Right.
And she said, "We found our niche." And she says, "It's a lot of people our age, and they're having fun." So, like, one of the runs that they're gonna do is they're going to do a bourbon run in Kentucky where they run from distillery to distillery, which we figure by the end, they may all be on the ground, but
Oh my gosh.
they're it's fun,
Right,
and it
right.
has a good story, and they laugh, and, I mean, she's really built up
Mm,
her community, the 2 of them have, and I thought that was really good advice because I do see this a lot with people where they're like, "Well, I tried that." You know,
right.
I joined a book club, but I didn't like the people." I'm like, "Well, then try another book club." But I think that's a really good reminder that it's not just a one and done. You may have to find your niche.
Such such a great point. I'm really glad that she brought that up. Yeah,
Me too.
don't give up. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I also thought was important, and again, I think this may require some people to kind of go outside the box a little bit. But if you are new to an area, whether that's a business, a gym, a community, if you've made a few connections and if there's someone that you're intrigued by or that you're thinking, "Hey, maybe this is someone that, like, we could help each other." Don't hesitate to ask for an introduction.
Mhm.
Like, "Hey, can you introduce me to this person? Because I think
Yep,
that, like, this would be great." And, not everyone's gonna be open to it, but you've got nothing to lose.
exactly. Such a g again, so simple, but probably something we would overlook, right? This
Mhm.
idea that, "Oh, wait, we could just, you know, get introduced to someone and see, right, where it could go." But yes.
Yeah. What other things are on your list in terms of how to connect with others?
Well, one I think that's probably obvious but worth mentioning is volunteering,
Yes.
right? If
Yep.
volunteering at, say y- if you love animals, check out volunteer opportunities at your local humane society, or you want to make a difference for underserved populations, check out, do you have a community kitchen in your area? But
Mhm.
this is another great way. I guess it's similar, you could say, to that level of intentionally joining a group, right? But it's kind of got a twist to it, right? Because you're you're doing an act of service.
Yes.
Uh, and I think that acts of service is another way to really foster those community connections that we're talking about.
That's a really good point. And that's one of those things too where it's that idea of helping someone else can really be rewarding.
Mhm. Absolutely.
One of the other and it's kind of a story, but I wanna throw out there, the point that I wanna make is, again, it's very easy in life to get caught up and lose connection, and so I think it's important and if you need to be pragmatic about it and make a list, but think about the relationships that have maybe gone by the wayside or someone you
Yep.
haven't talked to. So I think it's important to maybe try to reconnect with those dormant relationships. And it's kind of interesting. This coincides. My husband had bought me a set of golf clubs for my birthday this summer. And it was really interesting because I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, clearly, I mean, I don't know what I'm doing. So take some lessons. But I made the comment, right? I said,
Mhm.
I mean, I have enough property where I can also play here at home and practice. But I said to my husband, I'm like, I'm not going to be making it off the driving range this summer. Like, because I'm not good. And he's like, "Oh, no, no, we'll get you out there." And so I had gone to a housewarming party and I saw some people there and they had, they knew that I got the clubs and they're like, "How are you doing?" And I'm just like, it's a process." And we had always talked about like, "Okay, well, we should golf together." And and we said that at the party, and then the next day I emailed them and I said, "Hey guys," I'm like, "You know what? we said we should golf, so let's just nail down a date and do it."
Mhm.
And so we did, and it was super fun, and the next time I went to the driving range, all I did was put a picture up on social media of my clubs and at the driving range, and I just said, "Practice, practice, practice, and Advil." And an hour later, a friend of mine who I mean, I haven't seen her in a few years, she just texted me, she goes, "I wanna golf with you."
Oh, that's awesome.
And I was like, "Yes, alright, let's put something on the books." And then another, like, I don't know how many hours passed, and another friend was like, "I wanna golf with you." I'm like, "Okay, let's
Wow.
put
Yeah.
a date down." So, that was never my intention, right? Like, my
Right, right,
intention
right.
was to be like, I'm trying." And but it brought people it's bringing me closer to people that I haven't seen in a long time, some people that
Mhm.
I had no idea that they even tried to golf or did golf, and I think you just never know what is gonna come out of that, and again, my intention was not to be like, "Hey, people, who wants to play with me?" But that is what came of it, and it's been so cool.
I love that, Sarah, and, yeah, just to add to this, strategy of reaching out to old friends, right, that
Mhm.
maybe you haven't talked to in years.
Right.
I have 2 really good examples, and I can't take credit for either one of them, but but Derek recently reached out to various friends in, I think, the most creative of ways. So one was that he decided he was going to type letters to set, and you could certainly just do handwritten letters. You
Mhm.
could do it on your computer, whatever. But he has a typewriter, like an old fashioned typewriter, and he decided to type letters to, I think, three various friends from his past. And think about it, like, in this day and age, like, when is the last time you received a handwritten letter, right?
Right.
Like, it's and it can be, I think that it was such a unique way of just being like, I wanna connect with this person. I I don't wanna just send them a message on Facebook. Not that there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, but just a creative idea of how to connect. And the other one he did, this was with a different friend. This was a friend from middle school. He and a friend from middle school were obsessed with a certain comic.
Okay.
Don't ask me what the name was. I like, comics are not in my world. But so they would just pour over these comics together, right? It's like really what made them bond. So this was from middle school, and he decided, you can get anything now, like on eBay. He's like, I'm
Mm.
gonna see if I can track down the whole series of comics,
Oh,
and
wow.
I want to send them to him. His
Nice.
name is Scott, and he did.
That's great.
So can you imagine just, like, getting this package in the mail and, from something, right? Like, just this blast from the past,
Mhm.
from a dear friend, and these ideas went over incredibly well, right?
Nice.
So, there's just so many ways, I think, but like we said at the beginning, it takes intention,
Yes.
it takes some effort,
Mhm.
but I think that the rewards can be pretty great.
Yes. And I think it's important too when you think about and this might I'm not trying to make this sound overwhelming because I know for some it might feel that way, but it is about making it a priority.
Mhm.
So, there if you think of all the things that we include in our days and our weeks, but it's that effort and it's making a commitment to yourself and to those relationships to say, "Okay, I'm gonna make this a priority." Even if it's something small that's like a text that says, "Hey, I'm thinking of you today."
Exactly. Exactly. Start small so it
Yes.
doesn't become this overwhelming thing like, "Oh, great. Now, one more thing I have to do. Thanks, Megan and Sarah." That's not what we're trying to impart here. Yeah.
Right, right. one of the things I wanna throw out there, and I'm going to, full transparency, I have not read a single one of these books,
Mhm.
but there I did pull together, which I will put in the show notes, a a list of books that potentially could be helpful, and when I say that, because I think they go from it's a range, right? Like, whether you're trying to be connected from a business standpoint, or if you are trying or if you're a therapist, and you need
Mhm.
ideas, or if you're just trying to gather your own community at home. Um,
Mhm.
I will make sure I put them in the show notes because I do think some people they want to read books or they wanna have
Mhm.
references beyond, what we've shared.
Absolutely. Yes. Yep, and I came across a couple of books too I thought were worth noting, so we'll make sure all of those are in the show notes. And one last resource I will
Mhm,
just mention for those of you listeners that like to take these brief questionnaires. I did come across something called the Social Connectedness Scale,
mhm.
SCS for short.
Okay.
And I did a little research on it, and there's one very short version, which I was not very wowed by. I think it had like
Mm.
6 questions, but there's a revised version with 20 questions that really just is geared towards, especially if, and truth be told, I haven't taken it yet. I
Okay.
just found it, but I want to take it because I'm curious, at least according to this questionnaire, kind of where I would land. And I think if I remember right, it might kind of hone in on some areas that may be more challenging for you in terms of social connection.
Mhm.
So for anyone that's interested in that, we'll put the link for that
Okay.
as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, one of the things that Megan and I were talking about that we both kind of realized in prepping for today's episode was that there really is essentially what Megan termed a loneliness crisis. And that is what we are going to talk about in our next episode. We figured it really warranted a deeper dive. And I know that one of the books that's on the list, it's called Together: The Healing Power of Human Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World. And the description is a compassionate look at loneliness as a public health issue and how community can be medicine. So I think this feels like a logical follow-up for us. So that is what our next episode will be about. And as always, listeners, thank you for tuning in and have a great day and stay well.
Yeah. Thanks so much, everybody. Take good care.
If you want to share your thoughts or ideas with us, you can email us at therapyunpluggedpodcast@proton.me. Until next time, be sure to subscribe to Therapy Unplugged on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts.